Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a very underrated Pokemon in the Great League Fantasy Cup that has an ability to break that Azumarill, Alolan Sandslash core that is absolutely everywhere, and that is Shadow Scizor. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community and fellow content creator Elodie Colo, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, Elodie Colo's team is honestly pretty cool. He's running the Shadow Scizor on the lead with Giratina Origin Form and Dragapult as his final two Pokemon. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and let's take a look at the team in action. Hopping into the first match, picking up a pretty solid lead, Shadow Scizor versus the Alolan Sandslash. Now, as the Scizor, typically you will want to save at least one shield for the backline because it's highly likely that if there's a Sandslash lead, there very well could be an Azumarill lurking in the back. Opponent is going to bait the first. Scizor farming up quite a bit, throwing the Night Slash instantly, could have potentially done one more to go for the CMP tie, and if one more was done to CMP tie, that Night Slash actually would have KO'd. Oh, that is unfortunate. The good news is Dragapult does get an energy head start, however. I am fully expecting an Azumarill, and there it is. So honestly, it does a little bit work out that Dragapult does end up getting this nice energy advantage. Dragapult is going to be committing the shield as Azumarill fires off the Ice Beam. No baits from the Dragapult, looking to deal some serious damage with Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to land. Opponent going to send out a Flygon, but Flygon is not going to appreciate this energy advantage. Dragapult able to force a shield. We're now going to see a switch into Giratina Origin, and this is going to force the opponent to burn all of their energy. They are going to fire off a Dragon Claw, but it does not KO, and they're forced to fire off another move. Now, this is going to be a tricky endgame. Energy management on the Dragapult will be a must. Dragapult is going to fire off the Breaking Swipe right before the opponent is able to get the Dragon Claw. That is going to KO. Back in comes the Azumarill, and the perfect energy management. Dragapult winning the CMP tie, knocking out Azumarill, and taking the Game 1 win. Moving into the next match, Shadow Scizor versus Galarian Weezing. This is a pretty nice lead. Bullet Punch is going to add up quite significantly. Opponent is going to save switch into the Sand Attack Flygon. Sand Attack Flygon is another absolute beast in this meta. Scizor, I mean, look at these Bullet Punches. These Bullet Punches are just shredding through the opponent's HP. Opponent is going to go for a Dragon Claw because honestly at this health range, a Dragon Claw would still do a ton of damage. Night Slash number 2, opponent choosing to let the Flygon go. There is still the Weezing to watch out for. What is going to be their final Pokemon? They're going to send in a Mud Slapper. It's going to be Dugtrio, and Dugtrio swiftly answered with the Giratina Origin. Giratina will take a lot of damage from the Mud Bomb. Giratina barely able to hang on, making it to the Ominous Wind. Opponent is going to switch out, preserving the Glassy Dugtrio, and sending back in the Weezing. Weezing now going to be met with the Scizor, and look at the Bullet Punches go. That is not enough Fairy Winds for an overheat. It's going to be the Sludge, and that's going to do absolutely nothing. Scizor nearly getting a full farm down just by itself. And from here, I mean, you can just let this go and save the shield for Dragapult, as Dragapult is just going to get to fully astonish farm down Dugtrio, and the opponent will immediately resign the match. We get a rematch of game number 1 here. The same leads, the Shadow Scizor versus the Alolan Sandslash. Sandslash, of course, will lose charge attack priority by quite a bit here. Scizor is going to get to land that Night Slash, and that inflicts some serious damage. The shield from Scizor, opponent is going to go for the Drill Run. Scizor should be able to get the full farm down here, and does. So Scizor now exits with quite a lot of energy, which can be very useful if the opponent does decide to bring in an Azumarill, and they do. Banking the Trailblaze for later, going to pivot into the Giratina. Opponent is going to switch out, and their final Pokemon is revealed to be Dragapult. Ominous Wind shielded up by the opponent. These Astonishes tearing through the Giratina, but the Dragapult paying a heavy price as well. Dragapult fires off the Breaking Swipe. Now we have the mirror match. Opponent gets farmed down by Elodie Colo's Dragapult, and with a Trailblaze loaded on that Scizor and an up energy Dragapult, this game should just be over. Opponent is going to let that through. That just does way too much damage. Dragapult going to commit the shield. Azumarill not the fastest at getting to these charge moves, and it's just getting fully farmed down. So Scizor able to set the table quite nicely, and Dragapult keeps just shredding teams in the endgame. Scizor versus Dugtrio, bad lead. The safe switch to Giratina. Giratina, we've seen can survive the Mud Bomb, but not by much. It barely hangs on here. Mud Bomb is going to land, and having a good IV Giratina Origin, the 3, 13, 15, paying massive dividends for Elodie Colo. he does get to land that ominous wind onto the opponent's Giratina. In comes Scizor, and Scizor is the CMP god, denying energy with the Night Slash. Switch clock will be up soon here. Going to choose to stay in with the Scizor to force a shield before trying to sweep with the Dragapult. Night Slash is going to be shielded. The Mud Slap did KO, and now it's all up to Dragapult. Dragapult up 2 Astonishes. Will it be able to close out this game? And it's going to be a Azumarill in the back. And this is going to be a tough one. Dragapult being up energy here is great. The Shadow Ball is going to be shielded up by the opponent. I don't know if you can Astonish it into Shadow Ball range. This game is going to be very, very close no matter what happens. The Ice Beam is going to be shielded here. Firing off the Shadow Ball. Is this going to be enough to knock out? Can Azumarill hang on? Azumarill does hang on. Oh, that is unfortunate there. Play Rough knocks out the Dragapult, and that's game over. We move to the next match, and what do you know? It's the third Sandslash lead. This cup really does not have a lot of variety, but that's part of why I do think that this team from Elodicolo is very cool. Because Shadow Scizor, not a Pokemon that you're seeing a lot of, and there's a boost from the Shadow Scizor, and we are off to the races. Sandslash base with the Ice Punch, boosted Bullet Punches shredding through the Sandslash. In comes Giratina. But Giratina is going to pay a heavy price here. This is a boosted Shadow Scizor. Another boost from the Scizor. Look at the Bullet Punches. Oh my goodness. The quad boosted Scizor. Absolute rampage here. KOing 1 3/4 Pokemon by itself and taking both shields as well. In comes Dragapult. Dragapult going to look to shield once and farm all the way down. The ominous wind bait does get shielded. Now it's the opponent's turn to boost, but it does not save them. In the back is Azumarill, and this game is immediately over. Trying to CMP tie the opponent to an Ice Beam, but the opponent is going to look for an overfarm as they should. The Shadow Ball lands, and you can just bring in the Giratina. Giratina does not get knocked out by any one move here. Opponent will go for the Play Rough. That's a very comfortable survive for the Giratina. An ominous wind will secure the KO, but Shadow Scizor absolutely... Oh, and there's another boost! What was with that game? Shadow Scizor went absolutely off with 2 boosts, and we saw 2 Giratina boosts as well. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, leading Scizor into Turtonator. Giratina Origin save switch answered with an Azumarill, and that is not a response to a Giratina save switch whatsoever. As Giratina up energy, if he wants to, he can very cleanly make a play for switch here, and that's what he's going to do. Committing the first shield, opponent is going to bait with an Ice Beam, look to farm up a ton of energy, and now look to connect with the harder hitting Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball from the Giratina is going to connect some very nice damage onto the Azumarill. Giratina choosing to let this go, and Ice Beam will not be enough to knock out, needs to go for a Play Rough, goes for the Ice Beam trainer. No, that is not what was needed in this moment, and now they're forced to go down a shield. The Azumarill is, of course, going to be met with the Scizor, because Scizor not going to have a lot of value with a Turtonator on the field. And then 1-0 shield Dragapult is about to put in some serious work. Play Rough is going to land. Scizor is able to get the farm down. In comes the Turtonator. There's the switch to the Dragapult. In the back is Whimsicott. And the opponent is now in a very tough position, because Whimsicott has no shields to hide behind. And it is super frail. He's going to overfarm quite significantly here. Shadow Ball will easily get rid of the Whimsicott, and then Turtonator will re-enter the field of play, but thanks to his careful energy management, he outpaces the Turtonator. Breaking Swipe does way too much damage. Scizor's one off a move as well, so there's just no hope for the opponent, despite their absolutely amazing lead. Bad lead in the next match, Shadow Scizor versus Excadrill, going to pivot out into the Giratina. Opponent responds with Azumarill, and again, this is very, very fine for the Giratina. Giratina firing off Shadow Ball. This will inflict some very solid damage onto the Azumarill. Azumarill does actually decide to give up an early shield. If you can get shields down, the Mudslappers in this meta become way less threatening, because they're only good when they have shields to hide behind. So even something like a Scizor, if it can land a Night Slash or a Trailblaze, that will inflict massive, massive damage onto the Excadrill. Giratina gonna let this go. Elodicolo understanding that and saying, you know what? I'm gonna try and go for some serious Scizor sweeps. Opponent pivots out into the Excadrill. Excadrill is going to fire off a Drill Run to force a shield from the Scizor. Scizor going straight for the Trailblaze, looking to ramp up its attack. Trailblaze picks up the one-hit hit KO. In comes Ferrothorn, and Ferrothorn is now going to be met with a boosted Night Slash. This will inflict some serious damage. Night Slash is going to connect. Now the switch to Dragapult. If the opponent has Flash Cannon will hurt here. This will do substantial damage. Ferrothorn goes for a Power Whip. Now they're going to switch into Azumarill. Azumarill is just going to be cleanly knocked out by a Shadow Ball. The opponent really has to manage energy carefully with the Ferrothorn, but I just don't think they have the health remaining. They overfarm too much. Play to a CMP tie that they do not win. Breaking Swipe KOs the Ferrothorn. And these battles are clipped from his live stream, so I believe he added that effect in. It was a very cool effect, though. All right, Shadow Scizor into Alolan Sandslash. And again, we've seen this play out a lot. There's always going to be that Azumarill in the back. You can farm up, throw on 6. And if they no shield, you can farm down. And if they shield, then you can very safely throw 5 more if they bait and then CMP tie them. So they will go for the bait. So you can very safely throw 5 more here and you're guaranteed to pick up a knockout. The opponent actually makes a switch out and a catch onto Azumarill. So they're able to save that Alolan Sandslash. And now we will see Giratina enter the field of play. This situation is a little bit uncomfortable just due to the fact that the Sandslash is still around and the Sandslash, it did save quite a bit of energy. Giratina is going to no-shield. Play Rough would not be able to knock out from this range. It does a ton of damage, though. Giratina farming up as much as it can, trying to exit with a lot of residual energy, but unfortunately, it cannot make a move versus the Sandslash. Sandslash re-enters the field of play. It has energy stored, and this is going to be tough. I think you just have to let it go and try and sweep with Dragapult. Can one Astonish KO? It'd be very clutch. If so, no! The Alolan Sandslash gets to the move. Ice Punch is going to force the shield. In the back is Giratina, and unfortunately this game is going to be a loss. Elodie going for the Hail Mary win con here of the Shadow Ball, but the opponent has the shield. It's a CMP tie, and unfortunately this game will not be a win. A pretty familiar team comp that we have seen a couple times, but the opponent getting that catch put them in a really good position. We move to the next match, Shadow Scizor versus the Giratina. Opponent safe switches into a Fire Fang Salamence. Fire Fang Salamence, I believe as Giratina, you could just shield once and farm all the way down. Because Salamence, if it can land a fly, that would be very scary. But Fire Fang's not going to do a lot to the Dragon type. And now Elodie Giratina just has an insurmountable energy lead. So when the opponent sends theirs back in, the opponent is not going to have a great day. I love this Ominous Wind bait. Opponent ends up calling it, but that still does very good damage. You can still outpace and either KO or get the shield back. Opponent is going to end up committing the shield, and they're forced to throw as well because you can actually get to a third Ominous Wind. The pacing is so good. In comes the Dragapult. Dragapult just astonishes down. In the back, the opponent has their own Dragapult. So the opponent, interestingly enough, was running a somewhat similar comp where they did have the 2 Ghost Dragons, but they were running an ABA with a Fire Fang Salamence. But Scizor, this is massive overkill. That would probably knock out 3 Dragapults, and that will be game over. Hopping into the next match, Shadow Scizor versus Giratina. Once again, this Giratina is staying in this matchup, going for the Ominous Wind, but of course losing that CMP tie to Scizor. Scizor able to grab the shield from the opponent and will immediately concede the shield back, as even an Ominous Wind would do so much damage. We're going to see a safe switch by the opponent into Dugtrio. Dugtrio going to be answered with the Giratina. We've seen Mud Bomb does not KO here. Iron Head honestly might, but it is just going to be the Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb not of any concern to the Giratina. Ominous Wind is going to be no shielded by the opponent, and the Giratina actually takes it on 1 HP. Wow, I was not expecting it to survive there. In comes Scizor. Scizor just going to look to force the final shield and then try and sweep with the Dragapult. Opponent just lets it go because they have a second Mud Slapper in the back. Oh man. Getting a Breaking Swipe debuff would be massive here. Breaking Swipe is shielded, gets the debuff. Dragapult with the clutch. A true coin flip endgame. A 50-50 chance of winning, but the coin flips heads, and Elodie is able to get the win. Hopping into the final match, looks like he has gotten his ELO reveal at this point in the 2300s. Shadow Scizor versus the Alolan Sandslash. Because of course, what else would be on the lead in the Fantasy Cup? Again, Scizor with the overfarm to 6 to play to the CMP tie, and Scizor is just always going to be shielding back because this thing is a strong core breaker, but it is very frail. Opponent safe switches into a Turtonator. That could have been disastrous if the Incinerate landed, so Scizor switches out into the Giratina. Giratina will take a lot of damage from that Dragon Pulse, but it is barely able to hang on and make it to the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball into the Turtonator is going to be no shield, so Turtonator is able to flip switch advantage. In comes Dragapult. Dragapult does get the Astonish down and doesn't have to take a second Incinerate. The opponent can send in the Alolan Sandslash. Sandslash, I mean, these Shadow Claws are going to add up quite a bit, but so are the Astonishes. Breaking Swipe into the Sandslash is going to be no shielded. The switch to Scizor in the back is Azumarill, and Trainer, this is not a response to Scizor. Scizor going for the Trailblaze, massive damage to the Azumarill. Scizor farming up, getting to a boosted Night Slash. Now this will not KO, but it will get the Azumarill pretty low. The Azumarill is going to let that through. Azumarill realizes they're going to get farmed down unless they throw energy, but by throwing energy, they're just giving farm to Dragapult. And Dragapult with energy, way too deadly, farming down the Alolan Sandslash, and that is a good game. All in all, big thanks to Elodicolo for sending in this footage. I think Shadow Scizor, it's on the Glacier side of things, so it's not the easiest Pokemon to use, but if you're seeing, like he does, Alolan Sandslash plus Azumarill in nearly every battle, then the Shadow Scizor ends up being a pretty solid core breaker. One important note that I did want to mention if you do use Scizor is it is very important to try and CMP tie the Sandslash to their second drill run. Of course, if they drill run on the first, then it's going to be 12 total to get to their second drill run, but if they Ice Punch bait, then they will get to the next in only 11. But it looks like if you CMP tie the second Night Slash, it will actually knock out, whereas if you throw earlier, then they can actually survive on 1 HP. So a little bit of nuance there that if you do decide to try Scizor in these final few days of the Fantasy Cup, that could potentially help you win a few more matches. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to me and the channel is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.